Thank you so much, Win. Got it. All right. Thank you so much for that introduction, Wendy, and thank you to the lovely women on my team who are going to take very good care of me. I appreciate you all, and thanks to everybody who's here. Just know I cannot see any of your lovely faces, so if you want to talk to me, you need to raise your hand and let Lorene or one of the other volunteers let me know that you have something that you want to say, but I'm happy to take questions at any point. I know a lot about this topic, and I know you know a lot about this topic, so I'm hoping that we can work together and maybe teach you something you didn't think of, or maybe you can think of something in a new way. So onwards and upwards. Today we're going to talk about creating super supporters, the donor-volunteer connection. Thank you so much, Lorene, for anticipating me. I appreciate that. Here's kind of what we're going to talk about today. What is philanthropy? We think we know, maybe it's slightly different. What is a super supporter? We're going to find the current value of a volunteer hour. It just went up. We're going to turn volunteers into donors, and we're going to go the other way and turn donors into volunteers. So we have sort of 5 big buckets we're going to talk about today. Next slide, please. All right, Susan Ellis. We all know Ms. Ellis, one of the founders of our profession. And her definition of philanthropy is that it includes many types of giving, though most of the time it's seen as synonymous with fundraising. It isn't just though. And sometimes, unfortunately, giving of time, volunteering, is the stepchild of resource development. We're going to try to change that today. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. Your best potential donors might already be in your office stuffing envelopes and filing reports. They already believe in your mission. They are already there. They've already come to you. They've already made a decision to be with you, to give their time. So how can we ask for more? How can we get more? Let's go to the next one. Well, independent sector recently revised its value of a volunteer hour. It's at almost $30 now. I remember when this was in the $19 range. That's been a while. I've been in this field for going on 20 years. And I remember thinking, wow, that's a lot. That's way more than just minimum wage. So when you think about it, an unskilled volunteer at your organization, at your nonprofit, is worth almost $30 an hour to you. So this is valuable stuff. Okay. What we're going to talk about today is how to create super supporters. And these are those people who contribute significantly to both your volunteer program and your bottom line. So these are people who help you in a myriad of ways, not just donors, not just volunteers, but super supporters. Okay. So this works because it's all pieces of the same puzzle. Donors and volunteers fit into the same framework of puzzle pieces, because philanthropy is more than fundraising. It includes giving time, it includes in-kind goods and services, and your volunteers are philanthropists. They're donating time to you at a value of $29.95 an hour. And donors, on the opposite side of that coin, are philanthropists who are donating money right now. So these are all parts of the same puzzle, donors and volunteers. Lorene? And volunteers may be willing to give money, donors may be willing to give time, and everybody might be willing to donate in-kind goods and services. All you have to do is ask. This is what we're talking about. All right. That's where we were. One more back, please. Back one, please, Lorene. Thank you. So how do we do this? Volunteer managers and your fundraising staff working in partnership give people the opportunity to feel needed and useful. You know, Martin mentioned this morning in his excellent plenary about people wanting to volunteer because it makes them connected. It makes them feel useful. He gave that beautiful example of the young man who was on his last inch of the rope until he found a place to fit and be a volunteer. This is powerful. Well, volunteer managers and fundraisers give people the opportunity to feel needed and useful by asking them to be a part of the solution to your charity's programs. This is great stuff. Okay, first big section, turning donors into volunteers. Yes, ma'am. So, why would you ask donors to give time in addition to money? Why would you even do this? Well, the first big reason is they've already bought in. They're already giving you money. They're already on the same page. They already believe in your mission. This, asking them to give time, asking them to volunteer, gives that person another opportunity to engage with you and create a deeper connection, because it's all about relationships. It's all about the personal connections. Next slide. I found this graphic from Brewer Direct, and I thought it was so amazing, I had to reproduce it here. This is Mary Doe. This could also be Jane Doe or John Doe, doesn't matter. And you can see that this organization has this Mary character. She's a financial donor. She's an in-kind donor. She volunteers, and she also partners as a prayer partner. So they have this, Brewer Direct, has given us this example for a church, but this is easily replicable by any kind of organization, of all the different ways that you can engage one person, Mary. Mary isn't just Mary, the prayer partner. She isn't just Mary, the donor. She's all these things. She's a multiple partner. She's a super supporter. All right, next slide. This is a great story, and I'll tell you this up front. I've sort of sanitized these stories so that they would be more broad, but these are actual stories that I collected. So although they don't mention names and they don't mention organizations, these are real stories. All right, story number one. A local bank partnered with a charity whose mission was to provide free financial education curricula to schools. Because they were already big corporate donors, the charity did not ask bank employees to volunteer. Unaware of this history, the new volunteer coordinator called up the bank and invited them to help staff the annual fundraising gala. About 15 employees volunteered and afterwards expressed interest in ongoing opportunities. Nobody had asked. Next slide. Second story, also a true story. An arts and humanities charity had a great list of committed donors, many of whom had given for 3 or more years. That's great in and of itself. In a special fundraising appeal, the request went out for funding for a CPA to audit the books, which was a requirement to apply for big federal grants. A few days later, the charity got a call from a current donor. I'm a CPA. I've got my own small business. I would be happy to volunteer my services to do your audit. Once again, somebody needed to be asked. Excellent. Thank you, Lorraine. Next, we're going to talk about the other directions. We're going to flip the coin over, turning volunteers into donors. All right. So it's just a small step from asking someone to volunteer to asking them to donate. After all, money is just another need. And when you think about it, people are terrified to ask for money. Oh, what if they say no? But I bet you wouldn't feel the same if someone said, well, go over there and ask that man if he wants to volunteer. It's simply another need. This is just another way that a person can partner with you, can build a relationship with you, can feel good about doing something that has to do with your organization and is helping your clients. Okay. So why ask volunteers to donate money? You might notice that this slide looks very similar, and it's because these two populations overlap so much that this is pretty much the same slide as before, just with the words reversed. Why? The job descriptions overlap. They're already passionate about your mission. After all, they're already volunteering for you. It provides a greater opportunity for engagement, and it creates a deeper connection. Okay, next slide. There is a huge connection, and Volunteer Pro has a statistic that 2/3, 67%, in other words, a ginormous amount of people, when they volunteer somewhere, they also give money there. 2/3 of people who volunteer somewhere give money there. So you're starting off from a good place in the beginning. Okay, next slide. All right. Here's where that paper and pencil comes in that Wendy asked you to grab in the beginning. All right. So please take 2 minutes, and I need some help keeping time, please. In 2 minutes, I'd like you to brainstorm some strategies for your specific nonprofit or your specific place of business, whatever the case is, that you can to create super supporters. All right. Your time starts now. You have 2 minutes. If people would like to write comments in the chat box, that would also be wonderful so that others can see your great ideas. So Nora says, reach out to corporate partner employee bases. Rachel, I'm not sure we got your entire message. All I see is create, support our organization. It's totally fine, Rachel. That's how some days go. Joanna says, ask volunteers to give to a specific need, such as money for a mattress for our shelter. That's a great idea. A lot of appeals go down that road, Joanna. They say, you know, $5 a day will buy 3 meals for children in some country. So that's a really good way to do it because it gives a very specific impact. Aha, Rachel, create support our organization cards with info about donating items and put near the sign-in sheet, volunteer sign-in sheet. That's a great idea. Wendy, utilize Giving Days and Giving Tuesday to raise money and recruit volunteers. Great idea. Lorene, oh, it went by too fast. I'm sorry. We're going to have to grab that one in a minute. Morgan says, dedicate a small portion of a volunteer appreciation event to discussing donation options. That's an excellent idea. How are we looking on time, ladies? I think we probably got not much time left. Maybe 30 seconds. Oh, develop an elevator pitch. That's an excellent idea. Offer donors the opportunity to deepen their investment through service. That's an excellent, yes, that's a nice way to put it. Deepen your investment. That's a very nice phrase, Brenda. Thank you.
Oh, we're at 3 minutes.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. If anybody else has some amazing stuff, let's go ahead and go to the next slide, which I believe says share your best strategy in the chat box. Great. So we have done some of that already. So I'm going to suggest we just move along to the next piece. Okay. So as we all know, time plus money equals a happy nonprofit. And this slide was simply meant to illustrate that you really need both. You've got to have people who are willing to give of their time. You have to have people who are willing to give of their money. And when those people come together, when that synergy happens, magic, magic, magic. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now is when we get into the nitty-gritty. For the super supporter strategy to work, your volunteer program ducks need to be in a row. Are you ready? And I love this quote. I don't have ducks or a row. I've got squirrels and they are everywhere. Look, I used to work at a small nonprofit, multiple small nonprofits, and every single place I worked, I had squirrels. Sometimes they were cats. Sometimes they were kindergartners, but they were always squirrels and they would never sit in a row. And wow, sometimes it was, as they say here in the South, it was not cute, but we deal with it. It's all good. So we need to get prepared. All right. And one of the ways that we can do that is we can preempt what people are going to say. So again, with your paper, in 2 minutes, write down some reasons somebody may choose not to volunteer. Now go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Why might somebody choose not to volunteer? And I would like you to share your most outrageous reason that someone gave you in the chat box, because I know I've heard some real doozies, and I bet you have too. So 2 minutes. I'm glad you liked the quote, y'all. Too busy, not enough time. That's a big one. Very nice. I work during the day. All your opportunities are during the day. I work during the day. No benefit to them. That's a great one. They don't get the point of it. They don't understand why it has to do with them. Very good one. Oh, that's a good one, Brenda. I heard something negative about the organization or the executive director. Joanna says, the staff was mean to me. The staff was horrible to me. Yeah, I've heard that too. I'm sure that is a true story, Joanna. Yes, I've seen that play out myself in my own career. So yes. Yes, yes. Bad experience with a client, huh? So Cherry or Sherry, I apologize if I said your name wrong. What sort of a nonprofit do you work for? Can you put that in the chat box, please? You say ours can be challenging. What sort of a nonprofit do you work for?
Can I just share? Because it's probably going to be easier than typing.
Please, ma'am, please.
Okay. We are Lone Star Justice Alliance. And if I was going to give you an elevator pitch, I would tell you we are working to transform the justice system that would treat children as children and give them an opportunity to thrive. And it is, we have a three prongs, if you will. There is an area where we call Reimagine Justice. We also work with the Survivors Project, Survivors of Human Trafficking. And okay, shameless plug, if anyone was to see, it's something, there's a documentary called Kids Behind Bars. Our organization is episode number 4. So because ours is somewhat political, that can be a challenge. Even, well, some would see it as political, but we just see it as humane. So we have to do a lot of education because a lot of people don't understand how the laws work, particularly here, specifically for emerging adults and children. So there's a lot of education that needs to go on. So usually when I explain some things, then people would say, I didn't know that. I had no idea.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that others that resonates with them. Yes, we have something that's not easy to understand, that's not easy to relate to. And there's so much education that needs to happen on the front end. It's hard to get somebody to just come in the door in the first place. Thank you for sharing that. I've seen some other great comments. Let me see if I can go back a little bit. This one, Rachel says, our organization sounds like it's faith-based, but it isn't, and that draws people away. Kayla says, someone might not volunteer because they feel that the organization isn't fiscally responsible. Who knows where people get their information? If you get all your information from TikTok, sometimes it's wrong, and sometimes the wrong stuff gets out there. Lorene says, don't agree with the way our programs are delivered. We teach through mentoring, not lectures, and they wanted a lecture. That makes a lot of sense. Well, this is some good stuff. Let's take this last one from John. One volunteer told me he was repulsed by the idea that we wanted him to wear the t-shirt from us as if his own attire wasn't good enough. You know, I actually have some information about why that volunteer might not have liked that, John, but that's a completely separate topic. Why don't you email me? I'll give you my email at the end and I'll tell you probably why. Okay, let's stop there with John and go ahead. Great. All right, let's explore some reasons why people would want to volunteer. A personal tie to the charity's mission. So this would be something like, well, you know, I decided to volunteer for the American Cancer Society because my grandmother died of breast cancer, something like that. To build new skills, to learn new things, to be exposed to new or diverse ideas, to meet new people and make friends. There's a lot of extroverts out there and they need social time. So this is a big one. To learn more about the community. I know a friend of mine recently moved to Dallas and he said that the first thing he did was find a place to volunteer so he could make some friends and learn about the area where he lives. Feel important, have a sense of purpose, and to relieve tension. It can be something that you do that's just for yourself. I do this because it's important to me. It brings me back to zero mental health. Okay, here's why they quit. We don't tell them well enough what the impact is. We get caught up in the numbers. 50 volunteers, 10 hours a week, $5 million. We don't tell them the stories. We just tell them the facts. They're not given an opportunity to do something different or unusual or interesting. This is a big one. They feel unqualified. They feel that they don't have enough skills to participate. That's where the training comes in. That's where you tell them, you know, don't worry about it. We offer training for every single thing that we're going to ask you to do. The task feels like work. If you're already working 40 hours a week, don't want to go to your volunteer opportunity and work another 10. Not making new friends. It's not inspiring. You don't feel connected. You don't feel special. Or you just feel burnt out and overwhelmed and doing one more thing in the week just can't do it. All right, next slide. All right, another one of my stories which I'm sure you all find so delightful. All right. A nonprofit whose mission was to provide senior citizens as mentors for high school students was hesitant to ask its fixed income volunteers to contribute money. Okay. In the end, they created a dual approach. Number one, they asked these senior volunteers for a small monthly donation of $20, which was the price of a bus pass. And they provided information about planned giving. So the opportunity to leave a donation to the nonprofit in their will. I would like to add a third thing that I didn't add in here on purpose, but I just want to say as a side note, please don't assume for your volunteers how much money they can give. Please don't do that. Just because a person is on a fixed income, just because you may believe a person is on a fixed income, don't assume that. You never know. There's a famous story in Mississippi from the University of Southern Mississippi about a woman who worked cleaning the buildings for 20 years, and she left something like $2 million to the university when she died in her bequest. Nobody ever asked that woman for a donation. She's just a lowly janitor. What could she possibly give? Well, surprise, surprise. Huge millions of dollars. So please don't assume for someone else what they can or cannot do. They will make that decision for themselves. They're always welcome to say no, but they might say yes. Okay, next slide. Next story. A woman routinely volunteered between 7 and 10 hours a week at the nonprofit where her niece was a receptionist. After nearly a year, tisk tisk, a board member thanked the woman for her volunteer service and asked if she would also assist in the upcoming fundraising drive. During the drive, the volunteer collected 50 pledges, including her own. When asked about it, she said, "Well, nobody ever asked me before." See, you have to ask, and you shouldn't assume because people will surprise you every day. Every day, somebody will surprise you. Okay, so for the super supporter strategy to work, your fundraising and donation programs must be healthy and connected to volunteer generation and engagement. Remember, these are two sides of the same coin. So these two programs need to work together. Whoever the fundraiser person is and whoever the volunteer coordinator is, they need to know each other and they need to be on the same page. Okay, next slide. All righty. In 2 minutes, think of 5 or more reasons a volunteer may not donate. Next slide. And then share the reason that scares you the most in the chat box. I've had some of these. I'm going to go ahead and give you the 2 minutes, but there are some scary reasons why people might not want to give to your organization. Let's see what you come up with. 2 minutes. Rachel, that's the one that I was looking for. They see the org and don't think it's being run well enough or good enough or by good enough people. That's a scary reason. Joanna, they heard of your mismanagement. Yes. Yes. They aren't giving to you because they don't think that your organization is doing a good enough job with the money it already has. Scary, scary reasons. They feel like their time is enough. Yes. They don't think you need money because everything you use is free. That's a big one. They came away from their volunteer experience with a bad experience and they're not trustworthy. Whew. Big, deep, dark stuff, guys. And oftentimes, it's just a perception issue. Sometimes you haven't done a thing wrong. Sometimes somebody wrote some scary, bad stuff about you on social media or wrote a letter to the newspaper or someplace else. It's not necessarily true, but we have a lot of perceptions out there about what's true and what's not true. So I encourage you, volunteer people, to do your own research. Here's a good one, Lauren. They know we have lots of donors and we don't need the money. That's never true. I can't think of a single organization that said, no, don't worry about it. We got plenty of money. Nah, don't worry about it. Nah, we don't need any volunteers. We got plenty of staff. We don't need any money. No, we're good. We don't need anything. We don't need to grow. We don't need to expand. We don't want to do anything new. We are good. I've never heard anybody say that. No, never. Okay. All right. So again, and this bears repeating, which is why it's in here twice. For the super supporter strategy to work, your volunteer programs must be updated to reflect changing wants and flexible to match volunteer needs. This sounds suspiciously like a lot of what was said in the plenary this morning by Martin. I think maybe we ought to take a note of this. Okay, let's go on to the next slide, please. All right, this is where your brilliance as volunteer managers can really come to the forefront. This time I'm going to give you 3 whole minutes to come up with some volunteer activities. They can either be current ones or you can come up with some new ones. And I'd like you to figure out a way to update them in a way that reflects what we've been talking about. And also, if you think back to Martin's plenary this morning, the things that he was talking about. Can you do something at night? Can you offer something on the weekends? Can you offer something virtual? Can you offer something that can be in little chunks with kids? Right, 3 minutes this time. Please put your, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Please share 1 or 2 because we have, I think we've got enough time that you could share up to 2 updates in the chat box. So how are you going to update some of your volunteers and volunteer job descriptions in these changing times? Oh, donuts with the director, a regularly scheduled opportunity for volunteers to come in and meet the staff. That's an excellent idea. And it's very simple and it'll cost you $3 for donuts. So it's also cost effective. Excellent. What else are you brilliant people going to do? Dana says, put a tribute card packet in the new volunteer folder. Great idea. John, volunteer social media brand ambassadors and fundraisers with approved content. Very good idea. Here's a simple one that I teach in another workshop. Give your volunteer positions new names, catchy names, TikTok-y kind of names. For example, there is an animal charity here, basically a shelter. And instead of having dog walkers, they now have dog whisperers. Everybody wants to be a dog whisperer. They don't even know what it is. They want to be one. So rename something, call it something interesting. This is when garbage men became sanitation engineers, that kind of thinking. Brenda says, we've already tweaked many role descriptions to be virtual 24/7. That's an excellent idea. Because honestly, if COVID taught us anything, it taught us that 90% of stuff can be done from your house. What's a way to tweak the name receptionist? That's a great idea. Rachel, can this group of brilliant people help Rachel decide a dog whisperer version of the title for receptionist? Put that in the chat box. Paper slayer. That's an excellent one. What else? What else can we call a receptionist? Maybe usually the receptionist is the first person people come in contact with. So maybe primary, let's see, organization ambassador. That's an interesting idea. Maybe I was thinking about that thing from the cartoons, Grand High Imperial Poobah, but that doesn't really tell what it is. It's not helpful, but it's interesting. Oh, Laura says we call them office hosts. That's a good title. Instead of a receptionist, an office host. Excellent. Let's take one or two more and then we will move forward. Anybody else want to share how you're going to update a volunteer task? Or perhaps a new title for one of your current descriptions? Welcoming committee, that's nice. Director of First Impressions. Wow, go Sherry. Sherry, I apologize if I got that wrong. All right, let's move ahead. Can we get the next slide, please? All right. So the other thing that I would like to encourage you to do is to take some time, schedule some time, make an appointment with yourself to schedule some time to really look at your organization's volunteer positions, what's available, and see how you can tweak those, see how you can update those. Do they have to be in the office? Could they be done on a Sunday evening in your slippers at home? What could we call this instead? And then I want you to share that with the other people in your organization, because this is something, again, that has to be cross team. It has to be, everybody has to know that now the receptionist is the welcoming committee. So some of it is about your processes and your logistics, not just your creative brains. Okay, next slide, please. All right, another story. This is also a true story. This one came from my mother's nonprofit. A team of corporate volunteers in jeans and t-shirts showed up on a Saturday to demolish a dilapidated building. The task of picking up rubble and carting it away in a wheelbarrow fell to a middle-aged man who happily worked for 6 hours. He didn't complain. He just worked the wheelbarrows. Afterwards, we discovered that the man was an MBA and he was the VP for marketing. Afterwards, the nonprofit received a thank you note and an unsolicited check for $2,500. So sometimes all you've got to do is get those people in there, give them something to do that's meaningful. In this case, they could see the rubble disappear. And I'll tell you this too. We gave the women crowbars. They beat the beep out of those walls. They loved it. Women never get to use crowbars. So again, don't assume. Give the women the crowbars, give the men the wheelbarrows. They're going to have a great time. Okay, next slide, please. Remember, people don't know that your charity needs money or volunteers unless you ask for help. So these people are two sides of the same coin, and they need to know they're needed. It's a question of being needed. Ask for help. Let people know you need them. Okay, let's recap. Philanthropy, much more than fundraising. Super supporters give both time and money. and sometimes in-kind goods and services as well. Volunteer time is worth $29.95 an hour. Donors already believe in your mission, so you should ask them to volunteer too. And volunteers already believe in your mission, so you should ask them to donate. Okay, next slide. Yay! You transformed volunteers and donors into super supporters. Good job. Good job, everybody. All right. So we have come to the official question and answer period. Please raise your seat backs and tray tables to the upright position in preparation for landing, and let me know what you need. Does anybody have any questions? You may put it in the chat box, or you're welcome to just turn on your mic and ask me personally. Either one. Wendy, I'm starting to think that my presentation was so exceptional that everybody understands everything I said. Could that possibly be true?
We did get one question. Thank you, Dana.
Okay, Dana says, should we give special treatment to volunteers who are big donors? This is really a matter of how your organization chooses to deal with donors as a large group. So the conventional wisdom says, absolutely. If somebody gives $5, they are less valuable than somebody who gives $5,000. I am of the opinion that the $5 person and the $5,000 person are equal in terms of giving. Now, there are clearly things that you need to do for the $5,000 person that you probably wouldn't for the $5 person. For example, the $5,000 person needs a letter saying, thank you so much. We're going to name the wing after you. The $5 person doesn't need that. But there are so many great technologies now. I would suggest that you, for all intents and purposes, treat those people the same. People still need to know in your office that Mr. Smith gave $5 and Mrs. Jones gave $5,000 so that they can thank appropriately. But I would say overall, no, everybody should be treated equally. And you know, you're making the list, it's going to have the names, but in every other way, equal. Okay. Was there another question that already flashed by? I thought I saw something else. Do you have an example of a successful campaign to ask volunteers to donate? I actually did a whole presentation about that. It isn't this one. The long and the short of it is that you need to talk to each individual volunteer. Make some time to talk to your volunteers. Unless you just have millions and millions of them, you can probably schedule a time for 10 minutes, 15 minutes with each volunteer over the next month. And during the course of, hey, how are you doing? Would you like another cup of coffee? You can say, you know, we've got a new fundraising campaign, and we would like to give volunteers the opportunity to participate in that. There are 3 levels, 1, 2, and 3. Are you interested? It's very simple. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry, I can't see who said that. Sarah, hopefully that's helpful. All right. Laura says, thanks for reminding us that sometimes we overthink how we engage people. It's still true that the #1 reason people engage is because we ask. That's true. Thanks as well for reminding us that we shouldn't limit a person's engagement because we think we're asking for more than they can give. Never assume. Never assume. The guy in the jeans and the t-shirt, the MBA, you know, if you would have seen him on the street, somebody's dad, he can help you in a lot of ways, but you've got to ask. And again, don't assume. Even the smallest people, quote unquote, do miraculous things. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Here are the sources for everything. Can we go back? Thank you. Here are the sources for everything that I have on all of these slides. And I know that we're going to be sharing the entire PDF version of this with everybody. And they should still be clickable in the PDF, so that would be helpful. And then my contact information is on the final slide if you want to move ahead one. So feel free to email me at any point. I am one of the officers of my local DOVIA, which is why I have a DOVIA address. And please remember, my name has only got one L. Funny story, my parents were both in grad school when I was born, and they couldn't afford the second L. Ha ha. So it's Michelle with one L. There you go. Thanks
Michelle,
very much.
Michelle, can you share your website again as well?
Yes, it is Michelle D like David, Baker.com. MichelleDBaker.com. It's actually D for Dawn, but it's harder to hear. It's Michelle D like David, Baker.com.
And Michelle, were you going to share the slides?
I believe I already sent those to you, and you are welcome to share the slides with everybody. Yes.
Okay, great. So Becky, we were answering your question there. And so I think we're going to